Welcome to Maximal Being,
a podcast devoted to ditching fad diets and using real science to get you healthy and feeling great.
I'm Doc Mok, a GI and functional medicine doctor who harnesses the power of gut health to get you achieving your goals.
And I'm Jacky P, a well-informed layman who challenges the experts and asks the questions that you want.
Don't forget to hit the subscribe button or leave a comment.
And now, on to the show. Hello, 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 hello. Maximal Beings. It is I, your favorite layman, Jacky P, and I'm here with my co-hostess, with the mostest, thedocmok. Docmok, how are you today?
I am so good. I mean, this house is crazy right now. It's the Halloween season, so we have a graveyard out front, and we also have like all kinds of crazy construction going on inside here. So thankfully this background is shielding me, but Jacky P, I feel so lucky during this Halloween season to be sharing my time with the scary good talent of yourself. Yeah.
Oh, wow. That is good. I like that. Thank you. Well, I appreciate that. You know what? It scares me how much I love seeing your face, like it's just, it brings me joy. It makes me happy. And you know what? The great thing about our virtual backgrounds is that it's Halloween themed, so
exactly. Yeah.
It's great. It's perfect.
The colors are in theme. Absolutely.
The colors are in theme. And we're here, folks. Today is going to be I think an interesting, fun episode. We're going to bounce around a bit. It's been a while since Doc Mok and I have been able just to connect and talk and chat and gab. So we're going to be our guests, our own guests.
Yeah. I feel like we've been cheating you guys of the Jacky P Doc Mok banter because it's just pure gold,
Yeah, exactly. You know what? We've been cheating ourselves.
Yeah.
For not having this one time,
Yeah.
Paleo, keto, vegan, and carnivore. Maybe you've tried them all, but did you have success? Are you still doing that diet? Turns out there's not just one diet right for one particular person. By understanding how your body works and the relationship behind your body's workings and these diets, you can then approach the perfect plan for you. In the Perfect Human Diet course, we talk to you about your body's inner workings and the pros and cons of each plan. We discuss how our ancestors ate and have eaten and lay a framework to tailoring a plan that is perfect for you. To learn more about the Perfect Human Diet course, head to maximalbeing.com/courses to find out more. And as always, I'm Doc Mok, and I'm here to maximize your health. You cannot supplement your way to health, but there are things that we need to add to our lives that can maximize our pathway to wellness. The American diet is virtually devoid of omega-3 fatty acids, which play a major role in cardiovascular disease, gut permeability, and mental health. Personally, I take omega-3s every night, and iHerb is the best place for clean, natural sources of supplements. I love the ZenWise omega-3 fatty acid supplement, which is free of fish burps and good for the environment. Head on over to maximalbeing.com/iHerb, that's IHERB, and enter the code B as in boy, D as in dog, B as in boy, 5528 and receive 10% off your orders for all supplements. Maximize your supplements with iHerb.
We were thinking it's Halloween, right? Let's talk about the scary things we see out in the world, right? And for me, and I don't know if you would agree, Doc Mok, some of the scariest things I see out there is misinformation, right?
Yes.
Just people seeing things on social media or online and just I read it. I'm like, how can I make sure no one looks at this, right? So let's talk about some of the spooky myths out there. But first, I wanted to check in and see how you've been holding up, right? It's been a new year. We haven't talked about our fitness journeys in a while. So let's check in there. And I think we both have some new philosophies that we should maybe share with the folks.
Yeah. Jacky P, I can think back to my time in college, right? And most college kids listening out there, I think our listenership is a little bit older, but you can think back to college and everybody remembers the bro split in the gym, right? So one day you're doing biceps and back, and one day you're doing triceps and chest. And so that has sat with me throughout my entire fitness journey here up until recently, when I feel like I've seen the light over the last 6 months or so. I've been doing this program, which I've worked on through scientific research, and I've actually implemented it with a few of my clients, and coached a few people that I work with through this program. And I feel like it's pure gold, because it's not self-promoting, I'm not a fitness trainer, but like, this program just activates all the different scientific systems within your biochemistry. When we're starting to train Jacky P, we initiate one of our systems and we burn up a lot of our creatine as a primary fuel source. And once that's exhausted, we start to need power, right? We've talked about this on our mitochondrial episode. ATP is power, right? Adenosine triphosphate. We use different ways to stimulate this system. And so, I think through anaerobic exercise and then alternating that with different levels of high intensity interval training, you really can activate all of these different systems and elevate objective biomarkers, which we talked about really early on, I think episode 8 in our biomarker or our bioactive training tracking episode. So, I think that for the listeners out there, the important thing is to be a scientist, right? We kind of preach that time and time again, that whatever exercise regimen you may subscribe to, that you need to create some sort of objective measure of how you're performing. And Jacky P, I don't know what you use, but I use power output as my objective measure that I'm training with. And additionally, on my fitness watch here, and then I've also used different rings like the Oura ring. We don't get money from Oura ring. You can track your VO2 max, which is a really good measure of athletic performance. And I've seen over time doing this program that I'm doing, that not only does my power output go up, but my VO2 max has skyrocketed as well. So Jacky P, tell me what you think about that.
Well, that's pretty cool. I think, of course, what I like about you, Doc is that no matter what you do, you cannot help but be a nerd about it.
I'm such a nerd. So, yeah,
and I mean that, and that's an endearing. I don't want
Yeah.
It just like, there's always like a very, there's a scientific method with everything you do, and I really appreciate it because it makes me think about how I measure things and how I approach implementing a change in my nutrition or fitness. And I think that's great, and one thing I like to give you kudos is that you're always learning and you're always looking to improve, right? We all have our workouts or our nutrition regimens, and they may work great for us, but I always had the philosophy that you can always do a little bit better, right? If you could find a 1% increase, that's a win. So yeah, one, I need to figure out how to do this VO2 max thing, right? And I think that's really cool.
Yep.
But two, I would say I agree. I have been taking a similar change in my fitness, but for different reasons. I have a 3-year-old who is, he gets bigger every time I see him in the morning when he wakes up. And I, the last podcast, I made this joke about pre-nitro where pregnant women should be working out with like a 10-pound, bag of rice. But, my son is over 40 pounds. So I literally have a functional, like the first 10 minutes of my workout is functional. I take 50-pound dumbbells, I walk around with them, I pick them up, I put them down, pick them up, just so I can get used to throwing around that weight. Because one day, a couple months ago, I went to pick him up. And when you go to pick up something and it's heavier than you thought it would be, and like I stopped halfway and I had to rally to get him all the way up. And I'll tell you, as a father who worships the ground his son walks on, it bothered me. And I mean, I can squat, I bench press, I could shoulder press. I mean, I can curl like 60-pound. Like, I was like, but I want to make sure that I can pick up my son until I'm 90 years old. I don't care. So
Nice.
my
Yeah.
workout philosophy has been just more functional as well. And I'll share some with the folks that I've been having degenerative hip issues, and working out now is more about maintaining my mobility and my range of motion. And I tell you, I've gotten a whole new just respect for just stretching. You know,
Yep.
there's a stretching machine at my gym, or it's not a machine, it's like this, it looks like a jungle gym. And I would spend 20, 30 minutes there stretching, and I love it. And just stretching alone, I felt major differences in how I feel and how I also work out. So yeah, that's a little bit how my journey has been going. I think it's just, we all have to understand. I think we should all have goals, right? Before we do anything, before we start a nutrition regimen or a workout regimen, if we don't have a goal, we sometimes can lose sight of what we're doing and why. So more power to you, Doc Mok,
Yeah.
for, being evolving, right? And growing,
Yeah.
right?
You got to evolve as a species, right? And
Yeah,
you got to
absolutely.
you can't just take the bro split as what it
Yeah.
is, or look at Instagram, influencer A and see that they have a six pack and that program's going to work for you. It's not, right?
Yeah.
I'm approaching 40 very rapidly here.
Yeah.
Halloween, the day after Halloween, I'll be 40. And nobody's talking about what to do for our demographic with working
Mm,
out in the long term, right?
mm-hmm.
Working out for life. And stretching is not sexy. It's not going to get you hits on Twitter. It's not going to
Yeah.
get you likes. It's
Not
not going to
cool.
get you retweeted. But that is the key to success, Jackie P. You hit the nail on the head. Is like making stretching a priority as we get older is so important, and adapting to the
Mm,
changes that we have. You're not going to put on raw muscle as quickly as you are when you're 20, right? That's just the
mm-hmm.
way that we are biologically. So I think that, you're wise in knowing what's working for you and really harnessing that ability to stretch and work on, your mobility, because that's what's going to do the things that's really important in life.
Yeah. Stretch, folks. Listen, if what's his name again? He's like, stay hard. He was like the Marine. He did the Marine. David Goggins. I don't know if you know who he is. He had his thing. He said he never stretched everything. He started stretching, I think, at 40, and
Yeah.
he's haven't had an injury since.
Yeah.
And he runs these crazy 1,000-mile races or 100-mile races. So if that guy, who is, I think, just a whole different level of just beast,
Yeah.
if he's stretching, I mean, we should all be stretching.
And I think Jackie P, just to jump on that topic, like the world of recovery has changed over the last 10 years, right? The orthopedist that kind of coined the RICE regimen that we use
Mm-hmm.
for athletic recovery has redacted his point about icing your joints to recover from an athletic injury, because it slows the actual recovery process. I mean, if you're an elite athlete and you are doing a Olympic exercise in the morning and you have to compete in the afternoon, by all means ice those joints. But for us regular folks, us regular humans, icing is actually inhibiting things, as are anti-inflammatory drugs. I think. I mean, the gut is central to a lot of health, and NSAIDs like ibuprofen and Motrin and Aleve and Advil and etc. and all those things really create a leak in our gut, and you're really inhibiting your athletic performance by taking those medications. So my omega-3 comes up time and time again as a hero in the anti-inflammatory world. And I use magnesium lotion a lot to recover too. I think it's a good topical muscle relaxant that's natural.
Yeah, that's, and you bring up, I mean, it's hard for you not to bring up the gut, you as a person, Doc Mok, but also if we're speaking about health, right? Because the gut is tied to everything, which brings me to our first myth, right?
Yeah.
And I read this and I was like, I wish I could see Doc Mok's face
Oh my
the first
God.
time he reads the title of this, right? But there was an article, and Doc Mok, please, you can fill in the gaps here if I'm too. But essentially, this article said, colonoscopy study essentially shows, like, I forgot what the metrics were because I was too busy laughing at the absurdity of it. So if
Yes.
you could bring it up, but basically, there was a study that was released very recently, basically just saying colonoscopies don't work and that people should be more hesitant to have the procedure done, and that they're not good at finding issues with your uh, with your gastrointestinal issues. And I read this and I knew that Doc Mok probably saw this before me, and there must have been steam coming out of his ears. So, I
Yeah.
mean, Doc Mok, would you like to address this and bust the first myth of
Right.
the night?
So in the New England Journal of Medicine, which is one of our top journals, just recently on October 9th, there was an article that was put out by Brett Hauer et al. It's a large study out of Norway and Sweden of over 84,000 patients, a very large amount of people. And what they randomized people to is screening colonoscopy, or quote unquote usual care. What they looked at were a number of outcomes, including risk reduction, mortality, colonoscopy related adverse events. So we can always put a tear in the bowel or cause bleeding anytime we remove a polyp or do a colonoscopy. That risk is roughly less than 1 out of 1,000 in most prior studies. And they also looked at risk of death from usual care versus colonoscopy. And what they found, and what the headlines and what mainstream media has latched onto, is that there is no difference in death related to colon cancer for usual care group versus colonoscopy alone. So what is colon cancer, and what impacts death, and what does all of the prior data show? So there have been studies like this. These are kind of like attention grabbers. They're like clickbait. Colon cancer is a long game. So unlike a lot of cancers, colon cancer is a polyp will turn into a colon cancer over the period of about 5 to 10 years. And so, colon cancer screening in all of the other studies prior to this one has shown great impact. And it's because we can remove polyps before they turn into cancer, rather than affecting cancer alone. And I would say, it sounds weird, Jacky P, but of the cancers to have, colon cancer is a relatively good one, and people overall do pretty well. Even with stage 4 disease, with metastasis in lungs or liver, people can still get surgery and live for a very, very long time with a great quality of life. So for this study to assert a difference in mortality when perhaps, that's not really the tagline, I don't know that it really hits on the value of colon cancer screening, when in fact, you may be removing polyps and preventing cancer from even occurring, which is really the benefit of colon cancer screening. I had an issue with this, Jacky P, when I was a fellow. In 2016, we reviewed the article for a commercially available at-home stool-based colon cancer screening, and they published this data. And their study, their publishing of the data of that commercially available colon cancer screening stool test led to its approval by the FDA, and now it's a pretty commonplace in the algorithm. So what this study showed is that essentially this stool test misses 8% of colon cancers.
Wow.
But what they say is that they detect 92% of colon cancers, and put a happy box walking on the beach on TV, and everybody's happy, and you don't have to come in for a colonoscopy. And so I think that the New England Journal is has something against gastroenterologists, perhaps.
Mm.
All of us, I hate to break it to you, New England Journal of Medicine, but we're not starving for business. We have plenty of other things that we can be doing with our time. But it's really irresponsible of them to put out a study like this, and kind of miss the point of colonoscopy and what it does for colon cancer, which is lowering as a result of colonoscopy and early detection and removal of cancers. And you can talk to any patient that's had one of these exams and is living a long and happy life, and they will firmly advocate against this point. So I'm off my soapbox.
Church snapping.
Yeah,
I don't know if you can
exactly.
pick this up, but
Exactly.
church.
What's going on, Maximal Beings? It's Doc Mok here. Many of you are returning to the gym now, but some are not going back. Regardless of what you plan, Rogue has got the right gear to fit your needs. I personally own a barbell set and love it. The Black Ops shorts are sweat resistant and flexible for getting deep in your squats. Head on over to maximalbeing.com/rogue for our referral link. Order 3 items and they ship for free. And as usual, it's Doc Mok, and I'm here to maximize your pathway to wellness. If you're stuck at home and cannot make it to the grocery store, delivery may be the best way to stay clean and healthy. Instacart is the national leader in the direct-to-home delivery service. With numerous major chains and food from smaller stores, you can get those local veggies sent directly to your doorstep. Head on over to maximalbeing.com/Instacart and maximize your nutrition today.
Folks, I don't know. I feel like if there is something where there's a concern of a symptom that may possibly lead to cancer, and I'm speaking for myself, Jacky P, the layman, but I'd prefer to over-test than under-test.
Yep.
And of course there are risks associated with everything, but there's also a risk associated with not checking. So, there are a lot of pros and cons and weight, but be careful of what you read and what the studies are, right? Because I think there's, just like how Doc Mok pointed out, you can easily spin something by just, speaking from the other side of the table, right?
Yep.
But yeah, we're gonna leave that alone. If talk to your doctor and your physical, listen to me, your primary care physician and your GI doctor, and make sure that you're doing the right thing for yourself.
Yeah. Sometimes death is not the best outcome, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes we want life to be the
exactly.
best outcome.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So 8% also to me is a very large percent in the medical field. Like, when I hear of risks of certain things, like you said, 1 out of 1,000, right? That's a fraction of percent. So 8% is pretty high.
That's a big miss rate.
That's a big miss. Yeah. That's like 1 out of 12, really.
Yeah.
So yeah. But let's move on. More myths.
Yeah.
Because there's a ton of them out here.
Something less scary than this
something less
headline.
Scary. Here's one that I heard today at the gym, stretching. I heard someone say that, I didn't work out over the summer and all my muscle is turning into fat. And Doc Mok is shaking his head because he's already upset. And also, you know what? Scientists and physics experts will also probably be like, matter doesn't just change into different types of matter, right? This is almost a science thing as well, right? Like,
right.
But Doc Mok, maybe, you know what? Let's peel back. Why do you think people would feel, or where do you think the source of this myth came from, that if you're not working out, your muscle turns into fat?
It's a sheer lack of the understanding of how we're created and wired as human beings. So when we are born with the muscle fibers that will exist throughout most of our life, and these muscle fibers are capable of dividing and growing, what we call hypertrophy, right? And muscle fibers can grow concentrically, meaning they can get bigger around, or they can also get longer, or they can also switch the type of muscle fiber that they are. So they can turn from a fast twitch, meaning like a powerlifting sort of fiber, to endurance fiber, right? One that'll help you run a long distance. But that muscle fiber is completely incapable of redesignating itself into an adipocyte or a fat cell. That is physically impossible, right?
Yeah.
Right. We have stem cells. Everybody knows what a stem cell is, and these are cells that are not kind of designated as what type of cell they're going to turn into, but that's a finite amount of cells in our body that is able to do that. And so what happens when you don't use your muscles is they shrink, right? All of that hypertrophy, that bigness of those cells goes down, and then you intake excess amounts of calories and carbohydrate, and that grows your fat cells. And so it looks like in those areas that you've lost muscle and gained fat, which is true, but it's not that the cells themselves have decided like, fuck this muscle thing, I'm gonna turn into. I think that may be the first time I've cursed on this podcast.
I was about to say, Doc, you know what it is? That study has really gotten you rattled.
Yeah. But
yeah.
But it's impossible.
Yeah. I also dare say, just the story of the person, and I'm not judging, live your best life, have summer, like do your thing. But I can only assume if you haven't worked out all summer and you've probably been eating, carrying on, going on vacation, having happy hours, right? In Philly, we have sips. So everyone comes out on Wednesday night. So like you've probably been putting in more of that junk in your body as well, which is accelerating the fat growth, which is do you boo-boo, live your best life. But your muscles are there to help you, and they're just they're hanging
don't
out.
blame
They're not
them.
turning into fat. Yeah, don't blame your muscles. Thank your muscles,
Yeah, they're just on a vacation,
Yeah.
What's going on, Maximal Beings? Doc Mok here. If you haven't done so already, leave us a comment and hit the subscribe button. Let your friends and family know. That way we can get the word out and continue to bash the bro science.